Well, now that we've seen how we can apply some of these settings to some generic content, let's close up these files and we'll go out to our web project and we'll see how we can set it up. I'll start out by opening up my index page in the browser and we can work on that. And I'll just open that up in my text application as well. And while we're at it, I'll go ahead and bring up my CSS styles for the site as well. Now, as I said before, there's no single correct way to lay out a page. It's a good idea to explore the different stackings and properties that we've seen in the lesson so far, just to see how we can get the page to look the way we want. But there are a few things that I consistently do for my sites. Now, one of them we used in the last example, and that is creating a div that will contain the whole content for the page. Now, we know that the body does that for us, but in some cases I want to have a little bit different setting between the body and the content that I'm considering the page. In our last example, the body color background was white as a default, and we used our background stripe to create that look on the page. Inside of our document, I'm going to need one block that represents our page content. So I'm going to go right below the body tag, and I'm going to add in a div for the page. I'll use an ID attribute and set that equal to page like we did the last time. And I tend to use IDs whenever I'm going to have one element on a page, and I'll revert to using classes when I think I'm going to use the style more than once. Now, of course, we do need to close that tag down at the bottom, so I'll go right in here, right above my body close tag, and we'll add in our close div. And I'll leave myself a quick note with a comment, just so I don't forget what this div is for. Now we want to set up a style for our page like before, but since we're intending to use this style on the other pages in our site, let's set it up in our CSS document. And I try to keep my CSS file neat and tidy, so I usually put my ID styles above the class styles and below my tag styles. I'll add in one for page, starting it out with the pound sign, of course. We'll add in some braces. And let's set up a few things. Now, if I want my content centered like before, I'll need to give my page a width. So I'm going to add that property in and set it to about 800 pixels. And I want to set the margins again. So I'll just go in and set margin. And we'll use the shorthand setting to set 0 for the top and bottom margins. And I'll set auto for the left and right margins. Now I also wanted to use a background color, and for that I'd like to use the medium blue that we have up here in the comment at the top. So I'll just select that color and copy it, and we'll go back down to our page ID selector and add in a background color and set the value to our medium blue. Now we want to preview the page, so make sure you save your changes on both your style sheet and on our index page since we changed both, and we'll go back out to our browser and refresh the page. Now we can see that background's dropped in, so I'm just going to make my browser window a little bit bigger. And now we can see that 800 pixel width, and we can see that the page is floating in the center. Now we can also see that there's a little gap here at the top, and if we scroll down, there's another one at the bottom. And that's because we're still seeing the default margins and padding on the body. And since that can vary from browser to browser, it's a really good idea with most of your documents to go ahead and zero that out. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'll go back out to my style sheet, and I think we've already got a body selector started up here at the top that sets our font family. So I'm just going to go in there and we'll quickly set our margin, and we'll set that all to 0 by using one value there with the shorthand. And we'll do the same for our padding just to make sure that everything's cleaned out. Let's save that change, and let's see what our page looks like now. And now we can see that page is pushed right up against the top of the browser window. Now, next we want to group some of our elements together and use some of the natural groupings that we've already created. I'm going to want a header like before, but this time I'm going to want to include the navigation section inside the header. Down below that, I'd like to have our main content mainly sitting on the left-hand side of the page, and then I'd like to see this quote that we added floating over here at the right. Finally, we'll have our copyright down at the bottom. So let's go set up those sections. Now I'm going to take a look at my document here first, and we'll look at how things are broken up. First of all, we've already added header tags into the document, so we can use those to block out that section, and it already includes the nav. If we look down below, you can see that I have one section tag, and that includes everything from the paragraphs all the way down to the bottom of the table. And it stops right before our quote. Now on this page, you can see that the section tag starts below the header tag. So what I'm going to do is select that tag, and I'll cut it out of its current location, and we'll paste it right above the H1 tag. And that way we've included all of our elements inside that single section tag, and now we can use it to control the main content display. With that set up, we can use the header to control the top, as well as the nav, and we can use the section tag to control the main content, and down below I can use the block quote tag to control the quote, and the footer tag to control the copyright area. So let's go over to our CSS document and set those up. I'll start by setting up 3 new tag selectors right here below the body tag. The first one will be for the header tag, and then we need one for the section and the footer. I'll start off with the section tag first. That's going to be our main content. And what I want to do is set a width and a float, and we'll also set a background color. For the width, I'll set a property of about 600 pixels. That's most of the 800 pixel width of our page. Now we want it to be on the left-hand side of the page, so I'm going to set a float left. And I'd like to set up a background color. I'll just use white, and I'll use the standard name for that. And that way we'll have a white background for our main content that will be floating on the blue background of our page. Now that handles the left side of the content. Let's go down to our block quote setting, and we'll change the right-hand side. I wanted that quote to float over to the right-hand edge. So we're going to add a couple of style rules down in here. Now the first thing I want to set is a width, because right now this spreads all the way across our whole page. If we take a look at the document as it exists, my quote goes from one end to the other, and you'll also notice that it has its own margins. And that's because the block quote tag has a very large default margin on both the left and right-hand sides. So we're going to have to be careful about our math. If our main page is 800 pixels in width, and our main content is 600 pixels wide, that leaves us 200 pixels left, and we need to split that between the margins and the width of the quote itself. If we don't specify the margins, we won't really know what they are. So I'm going to do it this way. I'll set the width to 160 pixels. And I'll go ahead and set up a margin left and a margin right property. And we'll set those both to 20 pixels. That way, all of our widths add up to 800 properly. Now I didn't use shorthand here because I specifically wanted to leave the upper and lower margins as they were, and only set the left and right ones. And of course we want the quote to be on the right hand side of the page, so I'll add in a float right. Now let's save our changes and see what this looks like so far. I'll go and refresh my page, and we'll scroll up here a little bit. And we can still see the background of our page, but you'll notice it only extends down so far. Everything else is looking pretty good. I've got my content on a white background over here on the left-hand side. And my quote is floating over nicely here to the right with 20 pixel margins on the edge. But you can see that my copyright down here at the bottom is floated all the way up so that the page actually thinks that it's ending at this point. And we haven't even finished the main content yet. So obviously we need to stretch that down. But remember, the copyright section is inside of the page. So if I set the copyright section to clear, it will not only move that down below the other two elements, it'll also stretch the page out and show the background in the proper area. So let's go back and set that up. I'll go back to my CSS document here, and I'll go up to the footer tag selector that we built before. And first of all, we'll add in a clear both. Now we could have used left in this case, but I'm just using both in case we add some other elements later. Now just to make it look nice, I'd like to add a color so that it matches our logo at the top and give it a little height as well. So I'll first select my orange color here up at the top in our comment. And I'll go back down to my footer selector and we'll add in a background color. And I'll paste in my orange for that. And I'll also set up a height of about 30 pixels just to give it some space there. And just so the text is not too crowded, I'll give it some padding as well. We'll use the shorthand setting, and I'll add 10 pixels all around. Now let's save those changes, and we'll go back out and take a look at our page. Right off the bat, you can see that our page background is now stretching all the way down here to the bottom. And here we can see our copyright footer section, clearing both the main content sections and the quote that we have on the other side.